these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty.
my power,
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am
I am
tired,
tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
is Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
Hey, hello, everybody. September 11th, that fateful day, 2014. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Bill Press Show this Thursday. Yes, indeed. Here we are with you on Free Speech TV and on TawkrTV, TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV worldwide. And the president as anticipated, as promised, delivering a 15-minute speech from the foyer of the White House yesterday, right in front of the Blue Room, telling the American people that ISIS, in fact, poses a real threat to the region, a real threat to other Sunni states in the Middle East, and a real threat to American interests. Therefore, he said, we must act to demean and degrade, and destroy them. And his strategy for doing so, he outlined, it includes, of course, rearming the Iraqi military, giving more arms to the moderate opposition inside of Syria, all to support American airstrikes inside of Syria, and in addition, sending 475 American troops to Iraq to train the other fighters. But the president again insisted there will be no American combat boots on the ground. And as far as Congress goes, the president said, well, I'd like and welcome the support of Congress, but I don't need it. I've got authority to do whatever I want. That's the number one topic. Close behind it, just a day after the NFL, Roger Goodell, commissioner of the NFL, insisted that there was no way they had seen that videotape of Ray Rice striking his girlfriend inside of the elevator. AP reports that, in fact, they had it last April, long before we saw the other videotape outside the elevator. Roger Goodell and the NFL still in real hot water. All of that to talk about today, so get ready. Give us a call at 866-55-PRESS, The Bill Press Show, Thursday, September 11. Welcome.
This is The Bill Press Show.
You know, sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I'm not necessarily looking out and seeing all these water-wasting lawns and people that aren't as connected to their neighbors and their lives as they could be. I'm walking down the street looking, going, edible oases, rainwater, fed landscape, and just looking at the possibility of these sort of landscapes up and down the streets of neighborhoods and communities all across this world. Small actions do ripple and they add up and they have a cumulative impact. And so when you're building upon your small mindful actions, you know, you have the confidence and the ability to take on something a little bit greater. So that could be nice. This, in the context of where we're at as a planet with climate change and these really big issues and people that are more disconnected and less skilled than ever, it becomes even more amazing and powerful how much of a solution this is to design these ecological gardens and to come together with shared vision and shared voice. There's never been a time where your choices have mattered more. Doing something as simple as us transforming a landscape creates a model that anybody could look at far and wide, and you're sharing food and connecting and building skills together in your own neighborhood. It's a richer way to live in normal times, but in the new normal of climate change and erratic weather and economic upheaval, it becomes essential. Whether it's me, you, Gandhi, Che, MLK, Willy Wonka, whoever, past, present, or future, the power of our daily actions is all that we have. You know, and like our community said, give me a place to stand and a lever long enough and I'll move the world. And that's what those simple actions do. They move the world every day.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
On your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, have you liked war for the last 13 years? You got a couple of more years of it at least coming up, says President Obama. Hello, everybody. It is Thursday, September 11, a fateful day in our history indeed. So good to see you today. Thank you for joining us. I know you're going to want to jump right into this. Lots to talk about after the president's big primetime speech to the nation last night. And, of course, that will consume most of today's show, but not all of today's show, because we got lots to talk about on a lot of different fronts. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Guys, when I say get ready to jump in by giving us a call at 866-55-PRESS. Jump in by giving us your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. Here with you on your local progressive talk radio station this Thursday, September 11. Here with you on Free Speech TV and worldwide on our video stream, youtube.com/TawkrTV, TawkrTV. And, of course, those two radio apps which bring the radio show to you, even if you don't have a progressive radio station near you. The TuneIn app, download it. It's free. And iHeartRadio, that'll hook you up to one of our great local affiliates, and you are in the program. So good to see you this morning. How about it? The team here, Peter Ogburn and Lisa Murphy.
Here we are.
Hey, happy Thursday.
I know, we're getting there.
Let's get to work.
Moving this road.
Full 5-day week.
Right along.
This is the last day of the week, right? We're not
working.
It
is for me. I don't know about the rest of you. Alicia Cruz is there. Hi, Alicia, on the phones, 866-55-PRESS. And we're looking at you, and you're looking at us, thanks to Cyprian Bolding, our videographer, indeed. Do you go out and get your Apple Watch?
No. I was having a conversation
are they
going
to call them smart watches?
They're Apple Watches. They're calling them smart watches. We went from phones to smartphones. These are called smart watches.
Smart watches, okay.
I was having this conversation.
You can't get them, I think, until April, anyhow.
It's going to be a while before you can get them.
Yeah,
it's going to be a while.
I mean,
they
obviously, April's next year. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Not April of last year.
Yeah, right.
I was talking to my wife about this because she's a fitness instructor, and this is right up her alley, right? This whole wearable technology. She goes, I don't want to have it all relying right here on my watch, right? Like, she uses her phone for some stuff. She's got one of those fitness monitoring things that a lot of people have now. But it just seems like the thing that Apple gets away with is convincing you that you need something that you really don't necessarily need, right? I don't feel the need to get it at
like
all.
the idea of like a super duper Dick Tracy watch, but I don't think they've convinced me. They're not there yet, and they haven't convinced me I need one.
I will say this, though.
You know what? I even have, if I look at my watch right now, it says Wednesday the 10th, okay?
Really?
I can't.
You need a smarter watch.
Well, I can't even, but by 1 o'clock this afternoon, it'll say Thursday the 11th.
Wait, you just got the AM and PM thing, I think.
No, I don't. It's just because I travel. I come back from Europe 3 hours, or I go to the West Coast 3 hours, and I can never reset it. I can't figure it out. But I know, so I can't even. You know what I mean? Here's what I'm saying.
It's amazing how punctual you are.
Time on my,
right.
But I know that this afternoon I'll know what day and what time it is.
Okay, all right.
I don't even use my watch. I know what day and what time it is anyhow. I don't need my watch for that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you know what I do?
I don't use my watch for that. I use my watch to tell me what time it is.
I usually wear a watch, and I still look at my phone to get the date and time.
Same here. Most of the time now, I just use my iPhone.
I'll say this.
For the time.
I'll say this. When the iPad first came out, I said very similar things. I didn't think that we were going to need an iPad. I didn't think it was necessary. I thought, but I do love having an iPad. So I don't know. Maybe they'll win me over.
All right. Well, my point is now we know how. The reason I ask is because I was wondering how it would work. The iPhone, the iWatch rather, or the smart watch. David Letterman told us last night. Now we know.
I have one of those new smart watches. Did you see the commercial for the new smart watch? This is what I was talking about
Here's
earlier.
how they work.
Take a look.
Apple revolutionizes timekeeping with the amazing new Apple Watch. When you want to know the time, just press the button. The Apple Watch sends a wireless signal to Apple headquarters, where our system matches the Apple Watch request to your unique account ID, which has been linked to your email address. Within moments, you receive an email containing a confirmation code, which you enter into your Apple Watch. Apple then cross-references your time zone location, which is provided by the Apple Watch's GPS. Now just log into your Apple Watch by entering your username and password, and the current time is displayed. That's all there is to it. When you hear it, you're fan.
Revolutionary.
10 minutes later, you know what time it is.
That's good. I like
it really is. That's exactly.
Well.
Think about that before you buy one. Indeed. Okay. Yes, a lot coming up. We will start, of course, with the president's speech and get your reaction. Can't wait to hear from you whether he made the case last night. And what a lineup we've got for you today. John Nichols from The Nation, Congresswoman Barbara Lee from California, and Joe Cirincione from the Ploughshares Fund, all to talk about the president's speech. And then we'll take a couple of detours to talk to Lawrence Lessig, who's the man on campaign finance. Wrote a great book about it last year, and he's just gotten a lot more publicity since then. And then Sister Simone Campbell, Nuns on the Bus, are about to hop on the bus again on another nationwide bus ride. We'll find out all about her, from her, what that's all about. Did the president sell you on the need for war in Syria? But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. Speaking of Apple, one of the things that they did was they released the U2 album for free.
Yeah,
for everybody. Just pushed it out to everybody.
Why didn't I get it?
Wait, really? You didn't get it? Check it. Check it and see.
I didn't look on my iPad, but I looked on my iPhone. I don't have it on my phone.
They push it out to Apple device. Well, so this is sort of a new thing, right? Just exclusively releasing things to certain outlets. The band Alabama has taken note, and they announced that they are going to release their latest album exclusively for sale in Cracker Barrel restaurants.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe not quite as prestigious as Apple.
Hardly.
But they have a new album called Angels Among Us, Hymns and Gospel Favorites, the deluxe edition. You'll be able to buy it at any of the 632 Cracker Barrel stores all around the country for $11.99.
Breaking news, I just saw that the Pistorius verdict is due today.
It's due today.
If he does not get guilty, there ain't no justice.
Yeah. Congratulations to Katie Seagal. She was given a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which we know is sort of a scam. She is the star of this Sons of Anarchy TV show, which is about to begin its final season. But that's not the big story. The big story is she was joined by Christina Applegate, Ed O'Neill, and David Faustino. Those are the main characters of Married with Children. There was a Married with Children reunion at her Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony. They were all there they all took pictures together as the Bundys.
I should have been there.
I know.
Yeah.
As America's number
Front
one
and center.
fan.
I know, my favorite TV show.
I'm sorry you couldn't be there.
Oh, man. Some people it was Disney or something. No, for me, Married with Children.
Married with Children. And last night on The Tonight Show, Jimmy Fallon announced that he's going to have a very special guest on Monday, September 15th. That is going to be Barbra Streisand. This is the first late-night appearance that she's done in over 10 years. She doesn't do a lot of late-night TV. She has a new album coming out called Partners.
She doesn't do a lot of TV, period.
No, she doesn't. She has a new album coming out.
She's still performing.
Yeah, she's got this new album. It's like I said, it's called Partners. It's available next week. She does duets with Billy Joel. She does duet with Stevie Wonder. She has one with another country western singer, Blake Shelton. So it's an album of duets.
Yeah, she did an earlier album, didn't she, of duets? Or she was at least
Yeah, she
on
did.
one. I think she
I
did.
forget what that was.
Or she was at least on a duet album.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, she's great. I love Barbara Streisand. All right, thank
There
you,
you go.
Peter. Yes, indeed. All right, so President Obama, he stepped up to the plate last night. Get ready to tell us. I want to hear from you. He had a tough job. A war-weary president trying to convince a war-weary nation that is important for us to suit up and go to war again. That's what the challenge was. He didn't want to be there. We don't want to be there. But the president, his job last night was to convince us that ISIS is big enough and bad enough that we had to respond, that America had to take the leadership to wipe ISIS out. He began, and the purpose of the speech was to announce that, in fact, we have accepted this challenge. We're not going to do it alone, but we're going to go get them.
With a new Iraqi government in place and following consultations with allies abroad and Congress at home, I can announce that America will lead a broad coalition to roll back this terrorist threat.
And the president said, we're sending the message out that if you are threatening the United States, no matter where you are, we will hunt you down.
We will hunt down terrorists who threaten our country wherever they are. That means I will not hesitate to take action against ISIL in Syria as well as Iraq.
The president said, this is just like the operations that we've been conducting in Yemen and in Somalia for the last few years. We find out where they are, and we go after them. But he made this distinction several times. Don't think that this is just another war like the war in Iraq or another war like the war in Afghanistan. This one, he says, is different.
It will not involve American combat troops fighting on foreign soil. This counterterrorism campaign will be waged through a steady, relentless effort to take out ISIL wherever they exist using our air power.
Air power with backup ground troops from other nations, including Iraq and Syria. And the president did say, however, to train those other forces, we're going to need some more American personnel on the ground.
We will send an additional 475 service members to Iraq. As I've said before, these American forces will not have a combat mission. We will not get dragged into another ground war in Iraq.
No, not dragged into another ground war in Iraq. And the president said, one of the most important things I think he said last night is that I don't need Congress to authorize this, and I'm not going to ask Congress to authorize this. I've got all the authority I need as commander-in-chief, but I would welcome a little congressional support if they're so inclined.
I have the authority to address the threat from ISIL, but I believe we are strongest as a nation when the president and Congress work together.
So there you got it. Did the president convince you that this is something we got to get behind? 866-55-PRESS. So we know what the threat is. It's ISIS. And now we know what the strategy is. And again, I think it's very important. And the president spelled it out last night. The strategy is American airstrikes against ISIS targets, not just in Iraq, but inside of Syria. But given that we all know that airstrikes alone will not do the job, because these guys control a lot of territory, a lot of big cities like Mosul, 4.5 to 5 million people already under their jurisdiction. So they've really got a de facto state. It's going to take ground troops. They will not be American ground troops. So the president's strategy, the other elements of it are a new Iraqi government. We've talked about this the last few days, but it's important to realize the success of this strategy depends on 4 factors: a new Iraqi government, a newly trained, newly armed Iraqi military, and we saw how well they did the first time they were up against ISIS. 3, a newly trained and newly armed Syrian moderate opposition, and we kind of know how they've done for the last 3 years, not very well, and a new factor, resources including ground troops from from Sunni nations in the region who are also threatened by these Islamic extremists, namely Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Jordan. So those elements have to be in place. With those elements in place, that's the president's strategy. Now, what the president did not say is, he did say it would take time. He didn't say how much time, and he also said there are risks, there will be risks, and there will be cost, massive cost. As the New York Times points out this morning, we have spent over $1 trillion so far in Iraq. And what do we get for it, by the way? Yeah. You know what? We got another war, basically, and that's starting now. And this is going to last, I believe, longer than President Obama will be in office, and the next president will inherit this. It's important to know, to go into something like this. I think the other question, so let me just throw out that question. How did the president do? Did he convince you? Is this something you think we should get behind? And an important, really practical question is, should Congress authorize this? Should the president go without a vote of Congress? 866-55-PRESS. Let's jump into it here. As Americans, this is the president asking for our support, directly asking for our support last night. Is this something, liberals and conservatives, Americans all, that we can get behind? It's the Bill Press Show, a very important Thursday, September 11th.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful?
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university? And,
people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies.
In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
This is the Bill Press Show.
26 minutes after the hour, President Obama, with his primetime speech last night, did he make the sale? I got, just quickly, so many calls. Want to get to you. Fortunately, we got a president who does not follow the George W. Bush playbook when it comes to going to war. We can all be thankful for that. It's not shoot first, ask questions later anymore. Much more careful, much more deliberate, much more thoughtful, which is what we want. Unfortunately, I'm afraid, the strategy is built on four legs, no one of which we can control. A new Iraqi government that is really going to work. It's only 3 days old, for God's sakes. We're already planning a war based on a government that's 3 days old. Iraqi military, the Syrian opposition, and the fact that the Saudis and Jordanians and others would send arms as well. We can't control any of those. I'm not sure any of those are real. And I think finally, eventually, this is going to take eventually, if they don't, put it this way, if the Iraqi military and the Syrian opposition don't really step up to the plate, we will have to send combat troops in, and that's the last thing we want. Ike is down in Charleston, South Carolina. Hello, Ike. What's up?
Yeah, real quick. I don't know why the American people have forgotten about Kosovo. Don't sit here and tell me what we can or can't do with air power. And our technology is even better now than what it was. If we put enough air power up in the air and we lock that place down and start picking them off 1 by 1, 10 by 10, and then you get the Kurds and the rest of them on the ground and put a full force to it, I got news for you. We're not only going to decimate them, we're going to break them up, and we're going to do to them what we did to Al Qaeda.
Well, that's a good point, Ike. You know, I must admit, I've sort of forgotten about Kosovo. wasn't that long ago, but we can learn a lot of lessons there. But I think we can also learn a lot of lessons about the last 10 years in Iraq. And what all of that air power that we put in there and all that money we spent and 100,000+ troops in Iraq, and what did we get for it? Yeah, we're back at square one, unfortunately. Lots more calls coming up. The president, did he convince you? 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan. Thank you. And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
John Nichols from The Nation magazine, Washington correspondent for The Nation, joins us in the next segment. At the top of the next hour, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, all on the president's speech last night. One more point that on this question about, we haven't talked about that much yet, the question of congressional authorization. I think it's extremely important. Man, if I were advising the president, I would say, yeah, okay, dude, you've got the authority. Okay, I'm not going to get into that battle with you, that fight. That goes back to George Washington. But I do believe that the Constitution makes it pretty clear that only the Congress and not the president can declare war. I mean, that's spelled out in the Constitution, number one. But even if you don't want to make the whole constitutional law argument, I just think it's better to have the United States Congress on board. The United States Congress speaking for the American people on board before you take this nation to war. Otherwise, it's going to be strictly Obama's war. Obama's war. And so I would say, yes, go to Congress and, make these coward yellow bellies stand up and vote for something.
I was going to say, even this Congress.
Yeah, don't let them go out of town without voting on this. Make them vote for
That's
it.
right.
Shame them into voting for it.
That's a good point.
Defy them. I mean, if he should have done that in the speech last night, give another speech and say, how dare Congress go home without giving our military and the American people showing the kind of leadership that we need in this thing. I would stick it to Congress on this thing. Absolutely. Don't do it, Mr. President, without a vote from Congress. James, out in Battle Creek, Michigan. Hi, James. What do you say? Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. My comment is this. We have been in a state of war since September 11, 2001.
You got it.
When our very way of life has been threatened. And we're not fighting men. What we're fighting is an ideology and a belief system. And even if we went over there and killed everyone in ISIS, that really isn't going to eradicate the problem because the belief system is still in play. And there would only be others to just replace the ones that we did kill. So what we're combating is a belief system and an ideology.
Good point. So what do we do about it?
Well, what has to happen, in my opinion, is you have to change the mindset. And that is a difficult thing in itself because you have such a fractured system over there in terms of Sunni and Shia and Kurds, and tribal ties are more important than being affiliated with your particular country.
And it takes so much time. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, people, it's almost like, I hate to use the word, you have to convert them. But you certainly have to convince them, I think, that our values are better. The president made this point last night that the only thing these extremists believe in is the slaughter of anybody who gets in their way. You know, now, people with that, James is right, people with that mindset, I mean, they're just totally different than we are. And let me tell you, you cannot change their mindset with a bomb.
No.
Now, because it's, and we've seen it happen, other people will step up. Which doesn't mean, though, that's absolutely true. Doesn't mean you don't do anything. You know, Sherry in Chicago. Hey, Sherry on the great WCPT. Hi, Sherry.
Hey, good morning. Good to speak to you again.
Thank you.
As far as Congress goes, Congress has no choice financially because it's an election year, and they'll be labeled as unpatriotic. Number two, I agree with the other caller about.
But you know what, Sherry, on that, I think they're going to. I think what they want to do is duck it and get out of town and just not have to deal with it and not stand up and vote. You know, cowards again. But
yeah, I agree that the president is not or should not let that happen under no circumstances. The speech itself, I'm just proud of him. I really am behind him 100%. Did what needed to be done as far as his military brass. They strategized. That's what they came up with. Will there be war? I probably think along the lines you said that there probably will be because you're talking about a hornet's nest.
Mm-hmm. Whoa, we lost Sherry there. Too bad. Sherry, making a good point, excellent point as always, and good to hear from you. That you know, the idea, it's just to me, it's so iffy. The idea that we're going to be able to do this, and our only involvement is going to be airstrikes, no combat boots on the ground. And, of course, training these troops, and that they're going to go in and do the job.
Yeah. I kept hearing echoes of, when they stand up, we'll stand down. You know, when we get that army trained up, we'll stand down. It's just, and it never really went that great.
No. And again, the idea that you can turn this Iraqi military into an effective fighting force.
Yeah.
All right, I'll buy that. Yeah. We could do that, but how long is that going to take, and how much money is that going to take? It's not going to happen overnight. I mean, these guys are clowns, right? We've seen that. ISIS is where it is today because the Iraqi military folded.
Right.
And they were up there with our weapons. And where are our weapons and our tanks and our Chevys and our Suburbans and all of our equipment now? They're in the hands of ISIS. Why? Because the Iraqi army ran out of the trucks and ran back to Baghdad. They just said, here, you want these? You got them. We're leaving. We're out of here. That's why we are where we are. And the idea, again, we're going to turn them around, and now they're going to be our blitzkrieg, right, going after ISIS. Janet is in Aura, Michigan, I guess. Janet, hi, how are you?
Hi. I just wanted to say that this situation with ISIS is going to force the Congress that has refused to work with President Obama to work with President Obama. If he demands congressional approval, it absolutely forces them to work with them.
Janet, I think you're right. First of all, if the president forces them to, and we didn't hear that last night, he said he would welcome it, but he wasn't going to call on it. But I think this Congress, I would like to think you're right that Congress would say, well, it's our duty now to step up to the plate and to do the right thing. They haven't shown any willingness to do that yet, Janet, you know?
No, they haven't, but before he asked for congressional, last time he asked for it and he didn't get it.
Yes, right. So, but this time, this is an election year. I'm telling you, I have such a low opinion of this Congress. Yeah. And that's why I'm so glad we got Barbara Lee on at the top of the next hour. Remember, she's the only one who voted against the authorization for the war in Iraq.
In Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan.
Yeah,
sorry,
remember that.
Afghanistan.
The only one.
Only one, right. Now, this is a matter of, we're not even debating whether members of Congress ought to vote to support this action, right? Airstrikes in Syria, this new coalition led, or the American-led coalition against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. It's not only, okay, here's the vote, do you vote yes or no? We're debating whether or not they should vote. And we've heard a lot of members of Congress who've said they don't want to deal with it right now. Yeah. They just want to get out of town because midterm elections, they don't want to, they don't, you talk about American men and women taking the risk and putting their lives on the line in Iraq and Syria. These members of Congress are not willing to take take the risk of standing up to vote.
That's a real bummer, right? Having to do your job and vote.
That's how brave they are, right? That's how much backbone they are. They're not even willing to stand up and vote on this issue, which is just cowardice and it's just shameful. John Nichols covers Washington, D.C. for The Nation. Good friend standing by to join us with his take on, as a leading progressive, on the president's call for action last night. 866-55-PRESS. Your calls welcome, as always, throughout the show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about like $25,000.
I owe $23,000.
I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan. And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want, but lately that's been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
13 minutes before the top of the hour, President Obama, in his primetime speech to the nation last night, as I said at the top of the hour, a war-weary president trying to convince a war-weary nation that it's time to take up arms again. What's a liberal? What's a progressive? What's someone who opposed the war in Iraq and early on got tired of the war in Afghanistan after we completed our initial mission there? What are we supposed to do? We turn to Mr. Progressive. John Nichols covers the Washington, D.C. for The Nation magazine, a good friend of the program. Hello, John.
Hello, Bill. How are you?
All right. What do we do here, John? Is this something we ought to support or be cautious about?
People should never casually support any move toward war. We should always think about it. We should always debate about it. There are, at least to my view, situations where a country must respond, a country must act. But I think there are a lot of open questions as regards rushing to act in Syria and Iraq. I think these are different questions which have different international consequences. And so I strongly agree with Congressman John Garamendi and a handful of others who have said that this issue needs now to go to the Congress.
Yep.
And I know how frustrated we are with Congress. I know how inept it is at times. But in matters of war and peace, presidents should go to the Congress, they should ask for a debate and a vote. And so that's my sense of where this ought to go rather than a simple embrace.
You know what? I could not agree more. I think that's very, very important, and I think it'd be important for the president to have Congress behind him. And I don't want to leave Congress off the hook on this, right?
Right. That's number one.
Yeah.
Perhaps from a political standpoint. But there's another dynamic of this that gets lost, and that is the process of a congressional debate clarifies what is being talked about. You start to begin to talk about the amount of resources, human and economic, that are committed. You start to talk about timelines and goals.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, that is where you truly bring the American people into the process. It's sort of the genius of the Constitution. And there is the very real possibility that, as you suggest, a war-weary and a war-wary American people, in viewing that debate and tapping into it, may well ask for more constraint. And interestingly enough, sometimes the genius of the American people in their discomfort with going to war is a very healthy thing for presidents to hear.
John, if you look at the president's strategy, we've been talking about this, and the New York Times makes this point this morning in its editorial. The strategy is based on that we just do the air effort, right? But carrying out on the ground depends on a new stable Iraqi government that's going to endure. It's only 3 days old right now. An Iraqi military that's going to do the job it didn't do the last time they faced ISIS. Sunni moderate opposition, well-armed and well-trained. They haven't shown that they're able to accomplish too much against Assad or ISIS. And getting some troops from Saudi Arabia and Jordan and the United Arab Emirates. We've been giving them a lot of money, but we've never seen any help from them. So those are four elements of that strategy that are all pretty iffy, which means the whole strategy itself is kind of iffy, isn't it?
Well, let throw one more at you.
Oh, no.
Figuring out which side to be on in Syria.
Yeah, thank you. Right.
That is a huge international issue that has great consequences. Look, the bottom line is this. I respect the polling data that says the American people really are concerned about the Islamic State. But I also go into that polling data. And when I look at it, I see a couple of interesting things. Number one, the American people remain overwhelmingly opposed to boots on the ground.
Yep.
The president says he isn't going to do boots on the ground, but then he also announced last night 475 new soldiers going in.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes us now to, according to CNN, something like 1,700 soldiers on the ground.
Right. They have boots on, by the way.
Some of them. And then we've got these planes going over, right, which somebody may decide to try and shoot down.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up in a situation where, while we have a lot of talk up front about what we're not going to do, many, many risks, many, many dangers to those individuals, both flying planes and the troops on the ground, but also to an escalation.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
So all I would say is, I don't think that this president, who I do believe really tried to embrace some of that war weariness, would be harmed by a serious congressional debate at this point. And I think that many members of Congress, many wise members of Congress, are indicating that that would be a good idea.
Now, one of the strongest voices urging caution last night was our good friend Senator Bernie Sanders on MSNBC, and you've recently talked to Elizabeth Warren, who may also people have also talked about. Boy, it'd be great to have her out there in 2016 as an alternative voice. Where's she come down on this? Do you know? Did you have a chance to ask her?
I have not heard a clear statement, although I think that Elizabeth Warren has tended on foreign policy to be reasonably close to the White House. And so but I don't want to put words in her mouth. We'll hear more of what she says.
Did you ask her, is there any way that she would challenge Hillary Clinton in 2016?
Everyone has asked her that.
And what answer did you get?
I've heard no different answer. Look, in writing about her, and I think I will give shout-outs to the Boston Globe, which is her hometown paper.
Yeah.
They're the ones who really have pressed her on this issue, and she has responded because it's her home state. And again and again and again, you've seen a statement that she isn't running for president. But what I do think is significant, and I think this is a healthy thing, you've talked about this, Bill, it's an important thing to bring into the mix. Elizabeth Warren has said that she's very focused on 2014. Bernie Sanders has also said that, although both of them are folks that a lot of people talk about as potential presidential candidates. What I wrote about in The Nation this week is the extent to which that the messages that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have brought into the mix, that of a deep, serious economic populism that really does focus on issues here at home after so many years of adventuring around the world, that focus on economic populism has been taken up by a surprising number of candidates. And interestingly enough, they have won some very, very competitive, very difficult primaries.
Yep.
And the thing that I think a lot of our national media, which has been so focused on struggles to define the Republican Party, is missing is the fact that there is a real populist upsurge within the Democratic Party, an economic populist upsurge.
Absolutely. I give you a lot of credit for that, too, John Nichols, and we got to leave it right there and run. But thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see how this thing whole plays out through the debate in Congress. Thanks, John. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania. Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water. Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer. Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now. Please.
A few years ago, Plastic bag waste in our city came to a tipping point. It was clear we had a bag problem. My department was tasked to reduce plastic bag consumption. We needed to come up with ways to change human behavior. So we asked ourselves,
should I get back?
What do people really hate?
Yep.
Getting punched in the stomach. Preliminary studies showed that the consequences weren't severe enough to warrant behavioral change.
Actually, can I get that double bagged?
So we thought, what do people hate more than getting punched in the stomach? Kissing Helga.
Hey, big boy.
People didn't find her so offensive after all, so we had to get creative.
How many bags? Okay, now, pour this ice water down your pants.
We tried everything.
Eat the threat. Defuse this bomb.
Even fighting your clone. After blowing through millions of dollars of government funds on research, I came up with a brilliant idea.
Why don't we just charge 5 cents per bag?
That's a stupid idea.
Would you like a bag?
Yes.
5 cents a bag.
5 cents? 5 cents? Do I still have the option of getting punched?
Honestly, I don't know how everyone else missed it.
Why don't you just get a reusable bag?
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, hello, everybody. September 11, that fateful day, 2014. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Bill Press Show this Thursday. Yes, indeed. Here we are with you on Free Speech TV and on TawkrTV, TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV worldwide. And the president, as anticipated, as promised, delivering a 15-minute speech from the foyer of the White House yesterday, right in front of the Blue Room, telling the American people that ISIS, in fact, poses a real threat to the region, a real threat to other Sunni states in the Middle East, and a real threat to American interests. Therefore, he said, we must act to demean and degrade, and destroy them. And his strategy for doing so, he outlined. It includes, of course, rearming the Iraqi military, giving more arms to the moderate opposition inside of Syria, all to support American airstrikes inside of Syria, and in addition, sending 475 American troops to Iraq to train the other fighters. But the president again insisted there will be no American combat boots on the ground. And as far as Congress goes, the president said, well, I'd like and welcome the support of Congress, but I don't need it. I've got authority to do whatever I want. That's the number one topic. Close behind it, just a day after the NFL, Roger Goodell, commissioner of the NFL, insisted that there was no way they had seen that videotape of Ray Rice striking his girlfriend inside of the elevator. AP reports that, in fact, they had it last April, long before we saw the other videotape outside the elevator. Roger Goodell and the NFL still in real hot water. All of that to talk about today, so get ready. Give us a call at 866-55-PRESS, The Bill Press Show, Thursday, September 11. Welcome.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Just this month, my bill was like $138.
Even at one phone call a week cost me $40 to $50 every month.
I am living on a fixed income of SSI, so this is really a great hardship. Families are being punished. When they incarcerate their children, they incarcerate the whole family.
In 2011, the Media Action Grassroots Network, Working Narratives, and Prison Legal News founded the Campaign for Prison Phone Justice, an effort to call on the FCC to address the cost of interstate phone calls. The campaign mobilized prisoners to send hundreds of letters. Advocates and families filled out postcards, met with elected officials, and signed petitions. Partnerships were formed across the political spectrum and with groups in the criminal justice, civil rights, and public interest community. The film distribution company Participant Media and director Ava DuVernay joined the fight through a social action campaign tied to the release of the feature film Middle of Nowhere. In an effort to push the FCC to act, the campaign hosted a historic rally outside of the Federal Communications Commission where for the first time, families of prisoners, elected officials, civil rights and faith leaders came together to call for an end to predatory phone rates.
We're all held captive when predatory phone companies gouge our families.
My son has been incarcerated now for over 10 years, and my husband estimates that in the time we spent over $25,000 on prison phone calls.
My hero's not yours, you probably arrested them. Your schools probably neglected them. They spawn thoughts, you probably infected them. Feed us what you feed us, you can lay us next to them. FBI call it major crimes. Babies making babies cry.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
President Obama calls the nation to rally behind his effort leading a coalition against ISIS in Syria. Hello, everybody. It is Thursday, September 11. Yep, September 11 it is, that fateful day in our history, 13th anniversary. And we are here with you on your local progressive talk radio station. We are here with you on Free Speech TV. We are here with you on TawkrTV, talking about the president's big speech last night and other issues in the news today, including the fact that Oscar Pistorius has been found not guilty of premeditated murder, including the fact that it turns out the NFL probably, had the video of inside the elevator with Ray Rice way back in April, long before we ever saw even that second video. So lots, and the fact that campaign finance reform, the Senate likely to vote on a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. Lots going on here. We've got it all covered for you and look forward to taking your calls, hearing from you at 866-55-PRESS, on Twitter at BP Show, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy, as always.
Thank you so much for having me.
Glad you're here. Alicia Cruz on the phones, and Cyprian Bolding, of course, our videographer. President addressing the nation last night before the president even got to address the nation last night. Dick Cheney decided to do his speech first. The Republicans inviting Dick Cheney into the Senate to give them, and the Republicans in House and Senate, to give him their advice on what we should do about ISIS. Harry Reid says, "Are you kidding me?"
Taking advice from Dick Cheney on foreign policy? That's a terrifying prospect.
A terrifying prospect. I would rather take advice from foreign policy on my good friend from California, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who has been certainly one of the leading critics of the war in Iraq, the only member of Congress, as we know, to vote against the authorization of the use of force after the attacks of September 11. She was watching the president last night, I'm sure, and she joins us on our news line this morning. Congresswoman, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Hey,
glad to be with you, Bill.
Thank you. Good to talk with you. I want to start with a key statement of the president's last night about Congress and then get your reaction. Here he is.
I have the authority to address the threat from ISIL, but I believe we are strongest as a nation when the president and Congress work together.
So my question to you is, does he have the constitutional authority to do this without coming to Congress? And should he do it without coming to Congress?
Well, there's some question about legal authority currently. As I understand it, they're using the resolution actually that I voted against, the 2001, as the legal authority, which is quite interesting because that's what I said then, and that was that it was a blank check and it was overly broad,
right,
and could lead to perpetual war. And so their thinking is that, and others think that gives them the legal authority to do that.
Which, if I could just jump in, is kind of ironic because even the White House has said they think the authorization of the use of force needs amending because it is too broad, right?
Sure.
And now they're using it.
The president actually said he thought that should be repealed or sunset.
Oh, repealed, yeah.
You know, at the war, at a speech last year, I believe at the War College, it was the speech he gave. So I think that poses a real dilemma there. But I believe this is a new day, this is a new front, and the American people deserve to have their members of Congress exercise their constitutional duty and responsibility and to debate this and vote on it. And I still believe that, the plan he outlined last night, it was comprehensive. I think it was thought through and strategic. But it certainly included, and he said up front, an expansion of military strikes, and that puts us right back into a war. And I think that that aspect of it especially is very troubling for me, and the American people need to know exactly what these military operations entail, what their ramifications are, what they're going to cost, and make a decision and vote.
Right, and the only way to really get that information, I think, is through a debate in Congress, right? Where you
That's right.
Yeah,
and to lay out what all the options are. I mean, people, members may or may not vote for that, but we don't have, I don't think, enough information and enough understanding of the full ramifications of this new war.
Do you believe, Congresswoman, that U.S. airstrikes alone can defeat ISIS?
I don't believe that U.S. airstrikes alone can defeat ISIS. I don't think the administration believes that. And I don't think that is what the president's proposing. He laid out a political and diplomatic strategy, but the military option certainly is the option that the United States, as he said, was going to, well, the U.S. is leading, which, and that's what's so troubling. And I think that's why the Congress needs to be involved and needs a debate. But military strikes occurred and a war took place as it relates to Afghanistan and Iraq. Al-Qaeda, Taliban reconstituted. This is 13 years later. In another 10 years, what do we see? ISIS 2, ISIS 3. We have to be careful that we don't create a scenario now where there's more danger, more violence, and provides an opportunity for the formation of new terrorist groups. And I think that's why we have to be very careful.
Right. And on the military, you're right, the president's policy is a comprehensive one, but on the military side, if we all agree that airstrikes alone are not going to be sufficient, then on the ground portion of that, the president is saying we're going to depend on the Iraqi military and the Syrian moderate opposition and the other Sunni nations like Saudi Arabia and Jordan and the United Arab Emirates sending in troops as well. I mean, to what extent can we really count on them, right? The Iraqi military didn't do well the last time around.
The military didn't, and the government didn't. And going back to Dick Cheney and George Bush, it's because of them and the invasion and occupation and misleading the public on what was taking place in Iraq. It's because of this that ISIS was formed. I mean, ISIS was not around before.
Yeah, no.
And the Civil War and in many ways the neglect and the oppression, and the fact that Maliki didn't form an inclusive government. I mean, all of that gave rise to this.
Of course. Yeah.
And so, we have to really understand the history before we figure out how to deal with it.
Have you, as a member, have you been told, has Congress been told any idea, you referenced this just a little earlier, Congresswoman, any idea how long this operation would last or how much it would cost?
No, and I think the president was pretty clear that it's going to take a while. I mean, he said that publicly. I talked to many officials, and including the vice president, on this. And I don't believe anyone has any idea other than the fact that this is going to be protracted. It's going to be long-term. And ISIS, of course, I agree, needs to be dismantled and actually eliminated. But how do you do that without creating more violence and more terror against people?
Or leading to, as you indicated, an ISIS 2, ISIS 3, and God knows what is down the line. What is your sense of the Congress, Congresswoman, the people that you've talked to, even before there's any official debate? Are people inclined to give the president Democrats give the president a break here, or are there serious questions people have?
I think people have serious questions, but that doesn't mean they're not going to support the president. We have our systems of checks and balances, and so those serious questions are being raised by members, as they should. But that's why I'm going to continue to push and call for a debate. Now, Congressman Jones and McGovern and I wrote to the Speaker a couple of weeks ago, and we asked the Speaker to engage in a debate and bring forth an authorization and allow for a vote.
Are there?
We haven't heard back, but even before that letter, we sent one with, I think it was 105 members who signed my letter asking for a debate and bringing forth something to the floor, or putting forth a resolution. I think we sent that letter to the president saying that if the military strikes were going to be expanded and if we were going to engage militarily, we thought that he should put out what he wants to do in the form of an authorization.
Yeah. It's too bad. I saw Speaker Boehner at Trattoria Alberto the other night. If I had known he had your letter, I could have maybe bugged him and said, what are you going to do about Barbara Lee's letter here? So have there been any hearings scheduled on this, on ISIS that you know of?
I know we asked Speaker Boehner to at least require the Foreign Affairs Committee to do a hearing, but we also asked for an authorization to be marked up and put forth. I believe that some of the committees are discussing it. I'm on the Appropriations Committee. We have not had a notice of a hearing. Of course, the funding issue is going to come up, and so, the CR is coming up, the continuing resolution. And so there may not be a hearing. They may do everything in the continuing resolution.
Well, that's what we've been sort of told around the White House, is that not officially, right? But it looks like that the funding the money they need, particularly for the Syrian opposition, right, would be contained in the congressional resolution, the CR, as they call it, the continuing resolution rather than the CR, so that in effect it would be almost automatic, no hearings, no debate, no nothing. They just do this and then go home.
Yeah, and
that's a chicken
troubling
way of doing it.
That's troubling. As I understand it, that probably will come up next week. It was to come up today, and that to me is not the way you engage in a very serious operation that's going to lead to an expansion of the United States military forces, and that's what is going to happen. I mean, earlier, Bill, I supported the use of strikes to protect civilians, to prevent a genocide from taking place, and protect U.S. personnel. Those were limited and targeted, and I personally said, okay, if the outcome is what is stated, then I will support that.
And anything
beyond that, that's right. And anything beyond that, though, is an expansion of the military conflict and the U.S. involvement, and requires us to consider that, as we should under the Constitution. And it's expanding, and I'm concerned about mission creep, and I'm concerned that this could lead to another full-scale war with the United States leading. And as the president said, when he said leading, I'm, worry a little bit, because that means we're leading, and that puts a lot of responsibility on the American people.
Yeah, and it gets us into almost at least close to a perpetual state of war with no end, and
And that's what we're in right now. The president in several speeches has said we've got to end this perpetual state of war. And this is what I feared in 2001 and 2002. And when you engage in blank checks and give authorities to use force in perpetuity, this is what happens. It's very dangerous.
Well, and Congressman, I'm sure you're the last one who wants to say, I told you so, but you could almost say that right now. And I'm so glad that your voice was there in 2001, and your voice is still there today. We need you. I know you're not alone, but you're the leader there. So thanks so much for all that you're doing. Keep speaking out. You're asking the right questions, and thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you. Good talking with you, Bill.
All right, Congresswoman Barbara Lee. Bye-bye. Yeah, absolutely. She sees it, that this is just lots of serious questions, and the only way to get answers to those questions is to have a full congressional debate. I mean, that is not being anti-Obama. That's just being pro-America, seems to me. Have a full congressional debate, gets the answers to these. We've got a little time here. We're going to talk to Lawrence Lessig next, in the next half hour, about this whole problem of campaign finance, money, and corruption in politics. But take a couple of calls now on the president's call last night America to lead the coalition against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. Did he convince you? Did he make the sale? 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university? And,
people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies in Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
25 minutes after the hour, again in his primetime speech to the nation last night, President Obama saying that ISIS poses a real threat. He doesn't call it that, of course. Still calls him ISIL. poses a real threat to the American interests in the region and to our allies in the region, that we must degrade and eventually destroy ISIS, and that in order to do so, the president says that the United States will lead a coalition against ISIS wherever they happen to be, both in Iraq and inside of Syria. The main aspect of that coalition or driving force will be American airstrikes both in Iraq and in Syria against ISIS positions, and they will be buttressed by and accompanied by a ground operation comprised of Iraqi military, Sunni moderate opposition forces, and forces supplied by Sunni allies in the nation, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Jordan in particular, and all made possible by a new Iraqi unified government, which we now have in place. The president asserted that he has the authority to do so even without any vote from Congress, but he would welcome any support from Congress. We just heard Congresswoman Barbara Lee say she thinks it would be a big mistake for the president to do this without a full debate in Congress. And you say 866-55-PRESS. Let's start with Chuck from Winterport, Maine. Hi, Chuck.
Good morning, America.
Yes, sir. Yeah, right.
What I'm missing on the TV coverage is what's happened in the last 24 hours. But what I'm missing on the general coverage is to hear from historians, to hear from anthropologists, even social psychologists about what's been going on in the Middle East. We good Christians in the West have been trying to control that area ever since Alexander the Great, 2,400 years ago.
And we've been trying to do so for, well, probably since the days of Jimmy Carter, right, with Afghanistan. So, I mean, and how well has it worked out?
How do you mean?
Well, how well have we done in Iraq and in Afghanistan? I mean, just looking at, in Iraq, we spent $1 trillion over the last 13 years in Iraq, or 10 years in Iraq, and what did we get for it? We got another war. Yeah, which is about it. No, I agree, Chuck, with the idea of looking at historians. We never take that long-range perspective, and we never we don't learn from the past. We just keep making the same mistakes, I'm afraid, over and over again. Let's shift gears. Talk to Lawrence Lessig about money in politics coming up for the next half hour. Stay around.
This is the Bill Press Show.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use, which is a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC. Or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
33 minutes after the hour, Thursday, September 11, The Bill Press Show coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. And our studio in Capitol Hill, we are brought to you today in part by the International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers. You put those all together, it's the SMART Union under President Joseph Nigro. The good men and women of the SMART Union giving a fair day's work for a fair day's pay, you bet. And you can find out more about their good work at smart-union.org. Speaking of smart, one of the smartest guests that we've had ever, I think, in studio with us, and I remember well his first visit to the program about a year ago. Lawrence Lessig is a professor. I always want to put that N in there. I guess everybody does.
I wish I were Doris Lessing's relative.
There you go. Professor at Harvard and author of the book Republic Lost, a very powerful book about how we have lost our way, particularly because of the influence or the presence of so much money in the political system. He is back with us today as still the author of Republic Lost and the founder and head of the Mayday PAC. Hey, Lawrence, it's nice to see you again.
It's great to be back, Bill.
And I have to congratulate you. I mean, you came in, I thought you were like a voice crying in the wilderness last year, you know, your book. But your book got had a lot of success, got a lot of pickup, and I hear a lot more people talking about money in politics today. Even the Senate's about to consider, if they haven't already, this constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. So it's become an issue people are talking about.
Right, and not to mention, but let's mention Zephyr Teachout in New York, who ran a campaign with no money on the issue of money in politics, and out of nowhere got close to 40% of the vote in that primary against Andrew Cuomo. I mean, so this is the moment.
She had she just had a message and, $10 or something.
That's right, exactly right. And an amazing person running with her for Lieutenant Governor, Tim Wu, who's one of the most important people working on network neutrality. He created that term. The two of them were an extraordinary team.
So what does it tell you about the issue?
it tells us that this issue is important to voters, even if the politicians and the political pundits, that guide the politicians don't want to talk about it. The politicians don't want to talk about it because they're embarrassed about this issue. It's kind of humiliating to admit that as a congressperson, you spend 30 to 70% of your time raising money. And it's not raising money from all of us, right? They spend 30 to 70% of their time calling the tiniest fraction of the 1%. I calculate it's like something like 150,000 Americans who get these calls from this 30 to 70% of the time that members of Congress spend. 150,000, that's the same number of people in America who are named Lester. So it's the Lesters in America who are getting all this incredible attention from these members of Congress in order to fund their campaigns. That is it's an embarrassment about our democracy.
And in reading David Cole's review of Zephyr, boy, what a name.
Zephyr
Teachout.
Yeah.
Isn't that a great name?
Yeah.
I'm telling you. That's from, I don't know, Dickensian novel.
Dickensian model, that's right.
Yeah, it is. But so she's got a book out called Corruption in America, and David Cole's report, he showed that, I guess picking up what you said, that it's like, it's not 2% or 3%, it's like 1,000th of 1%, right?
It's an incredible...
Of people who write the big checks.
Yeah. Right, and that's not even talking about super PACs, right? For super PACs in 2012, it was 132 people who contributed 60% of the money in the super PACs. And that number, that percentage is going to be much higher in this cycle too. So the point is we are increasingly outsourcing the funding of our campaigns to the tiniest fraction of the 1%. We've created the green primary in America. There's like 2 stages to getting elected. You got to pass the green primary, you got to win the green primary, and then you get to run in the general election. Mm-hmm. But in the green primary, it's not all of us who get to play. It's the tiniest fraction of the 1%. So, we look back at our past and say the white primary in the South was a terrible, terrible part of American democracy, and it was. Well, we've just created the green primary, and the only the big difference is the white primary, at least it was the majority who got to participate. But in the green primary, it's the tiniest fraction of the 1% who are governing the green primary.
Right. Now, the Supreme Court believes that there's nothing wrong with all this money in politics, right? Because it's a form of freedom of First Amendment right, freedom of speech.
I think the court's position's a little bit more subtle. So one of the great things that Zephyr's book does, and I built on her earlier work when I wrote my book, her book sort of shows, it absolutely shows that the framers of our Constitution had a more subtle conception of corruption than just quid pro quo corruption.
Which the court says, unless it's quid pro quo, it's not corruption.
That's right. But what Zephyr did, and I had research assistants doing the same kind of work, is we went back to the framing of our Constitution. And we had them look at every instance where the word corruption was used. And so we found like 325 times that it was being used. And it was only 6 times out of that 325 where what they were talking about was quid pro quo corruption. The standard thing they were talking about is what we would think of as kind of institutional corruption. It's an institution that develops the wrong dependency. And their big focus was Parliament. Parliament was corrupt, not because people were taking bribes, but because the king had inserted himself into the Parliament by basically being able to appoint members to Parliament and therefore control Parliament. Parliament was dependent on the king. That was a corruption. And what Zephyr is saying about our current political system is that members of Congress are dependent on these funders for their campaigns. They are absolutely dependent 30 to 70% of the time. The thing they do the most is trying to raise money. And in that dependency is a corruption of the framers' design, because the framers told us we were going to have at least a House, now a House and a Senate, that would be, quote, as Madison put it, dependent on the people alone. And as Madison put in Federalist 57, by the people, he meant, quote, not the rich more than the poor. All right. Well, we've completely lost that sense of their sense of equality.
Well, Congress today is dependent on the people who write the big checks, but who are generally not there themselves, but represented by their lobbyists.
That's right. I mean, first of all, let me be clear. I think lobbyists are an important part of the system, and I'm not against lobbyists. But as John Edwards used to say when we used to quote John Edwards, there's all the difference in the world back then between a lawyer making an argument to a jury and a lawyer handing out $100 bills to the jurors. And the problem with our current lobbying system is they don't see the difference between those two things. So if we change the way we fund elections, the sort of solutions that Zephyr is talking about, the sort of solutions John Sarbanes is advancing with his Government by the People Act, Jim Rubin's the candidate we backed in New Hampshire. Jim Rubin's has a kind of tax, a voucher funded by tax credits that would support small dollar funding. The point is, any of these solutions would change the location of fundraising from the lobbyist-centered model to people-centered model. So the lobbyists would still be around here, but they wouldn't be the people handing out $100 bills to the jurors. They would just be making arguments to the congressman.
Yeah, when you say $100 bills, by the way, you are way underselling the level of checks that lobbyists in Washington hand out. But I didn't realize this, again, until I read this David Cole's review of Zephyr Teachout's book, which is called Corruption in America, that lobbying at one time was illegal.
Yes, right. So the
Think
Supreme
about
Court,
that. Lobbyist, illegal to to be a lobbyist.
Well, in this sense, what the court said, and the court in the last century, or not the last century, in the 19th century, very clearly said that it would be completely corrupt if we imagine a system developing where people were paid money to persuade members of Congress to do one thing or another. That would be totally corrupt. And
Totally
nobody would have...
un-American.
That's right.
Right.
Un-American. We'd have no faith in our democracy.
Right.
Well, they are right. We don't. People have no confidence in this democracy because they see again and again that what Congress is doing, the dances Congress are engaging in, is because of the money. There was a great piece by Zach Carter and Ryan Grimm in the Huffington Post a year ago where they were talking about the first quarter of 2011. They said, if you looked at the first quarter of 2011 and you said, what was the number one issue Congress considered? They said, most time on the floor, most time in committees. In the middle of two wars, we're still kind of in the middle of two wars, right? We had a huge debt problem. We had a huge unemployment problem. Still, there was 1,000 issues around Obamacare to deal with. We hadn't begun to address climate change. So what was the number one issue they spent their time dealing with? The bank swipe fee controversy. The question when you use your debit card, how much do the banks get to collect? How much do the credit? Now, why was that the number one issue? Because look, there's not one congressman who came to Washington with the charge, I'm going to solve the bank swipe fee controversy. There was not one. Why was that the number one issue? Because as they dance one way or the other, millions of dollars rain down upon them from the banks or the credit card interest to fund their campaigns. This is a completely corrupted system, even though I don't think there's any interesting level of bribery going on in this system. And that's the great point that Zephyr's really amazing book, Corruption in America, makes.
Yeah. Lawrence Lessig with us we're talking money and politics and what to do about it. And when we come back, some evidence already that people do care about this, voters do care about this, and might cast their vote if they're informed accordingly. 866-55-PRESS, your questions, your comments, when we come back here on The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight, it's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
13 minutes now before the top of the hour. Sister Simone Campbell from Nuns on the Bus here at the top of the next hour. Then we'll be joined by Joe Cirincione from the Ploughshares Fund. Right now we're talking money in politics. Too much of it from too few people. With Lawrence Lessig, from the author of Republic Lost, professor up at Harvard. Republic Lost is still out there in paperback, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Get it at your local bookstore.
You can download it. I have
download it. There you go.
It's free. I got them to let me license it for free under a Creative Commons license. So if you go to my site, republic.lessig.org, you can download a PDF of it for free.
Republic.lessig.org.
Yep.
Good for you. I never heard of an author giving his books away.
There's a bunch of us, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't expect me to do that. No, I got to tell you. How big? I want to ask you about this race up in New Hampshire. But first, how big and how bad are the Koch brothers and Sheldon Adelson?
Oh, they're incredibly big. Bad is a hard word in this context, I think, because I disagree with the politics. Mm-hmm. But they're taking advantage of the system as it is to bring about the political ends that they want. Look, I look at Tom Steyer spending $100 million to advance climate change legislation. Right. And I say, God bless you, Tom Steyer. God bless you. But I know Tom Steyer doesn't believe in a system where people like Tom Steyer are able to spend $100 million to affect political change. So I know Tom Steyer wants a different system. Mm-hmm. I don't know if the Koch brothers want a different system.
Of course they don't.
I've not heard. But I think that the critical thing is to get these people who are spending so much of their money to change our politics, not to unilaterally disarm, but to at least say, look, I'm going to give you a chunk. I'll tithe. I'll give you 10% of what I'm spending so that you can go around and try to change the system so that once again we have an ideal in America like the framers had, that we have the people, a Congress dependent on the people alone, and by the people we mean not the rich, more than the poor.
Okay. Now, for that to happen, you're going to have to get elected officials who will vote to change the system, and for them to do that, they need to know that they will get political support. Right. So that's, as I understand it, kind of the mission of the Mayday PAC.
Right.
And you've tried it out in at least one race so far.
2 races.
Okay.
So the Mayday PAC was started on May 1st. Mayday as in the distress signal.
Yes.
We said we were going to
like
crowdfund this super PAC. A super PAC to end all super PACs. And we said we wanted to raise first $1 million in 30 days. We did that in 13 days. Then we got that matched. And then we said we're going to raise $5 million in 30 days. And we did that by July 4th.
This is all crowdfunding?
It was crowdfunding, right. There was
That's
contingent
amazing.
funding in the sense that if we didn't meet our goal, we had to give our money back. And on July 4th in the morning, George Takei tweeted that produced $750,000 to our campaign.
Get out of here.
And so we hit that goal, and now I'm in the process of finalizing the idea of getting that $5 million matched. But the point for the 2014 cycle is to run in 5 core races, total of 8 that will be in, but 5 core races, to demonstrate that voters will vote on the basis of this issue, Democrats and Republicans. And if we can demonstrate that, and we have the data to show what it would take to actually now scale this up, then we want to come back in 2016 and run a much bigger campaign to win a Congress committed to fundamental reform in that election cycle.
All right, give us one example of what you found so far in 2014.
Well, the first race we were in is Ruben Gallego, who's a Democrat running in the Democratic primary in Arizona 7. He won. We got in pretty late, but he won very significantly. We found overwhelming, in our post-evidence polling, we found overwhelming rally that came around the spending that we had done about money in politics. The second race we had gotten in, we got in knowing this was an impossible race. This was the New Hampshire Republican Senate primary. When we got in, the candidate we supported, Jim Rubin, was at 9 points, and Scott Brown was at more than 60 points. Scott Brown, of course, the former Massachusetts senator. But Jim Rubin was the only Republican running for Senate in the nation who made the way we fund campaigns a central issue in his campaign. So we said, okay, we're going to back you. And we got into that race.
Pretty risky on his part.
It was incredibly risky.
Yeah.
And in New Hampshire, the Republican Party from Washington had basically told the Republicans in New Hampshire, we've got our candidate. His name is Scott Brown. You are not allowed to support anybody else. So it was Scott Brown, Jim Rubins, and then Bob Smith, who had been a senator before, was trying to run again. So those three, we got in at 9 points. We pushed Jim Rubins up to more than 24 points. But the really important thing...
On this issue.
Obviously, I don't want to take credit for everything.
Yeah.
Jim Rubins was a strong candidate. He also was the only Republican in the nation who was openly admitted that climate science is true.
Whoa!
Right? But anyway, Jim Rubins
I like this guy.
climbed to 24.5. But the critical thing is that when we did our post-election polling, among the Republicans who voted, so that's 7% of the population of New Hampshire actually voted in that primary. Of those 7% who actually voted, we found that close to 40%, 37%, believed that the issue of money in politics was a primary reason that they cast their vote. And of those people, Jim Rubins beat Scott Brown by 18 points. 18 points.
Yeah.
So the point we were trying to make is that if we can get this issue on the table, even for Republicans,
right,
we can begin to move a significant chunk of votes. And so he's just one in the total of 8 races we'll be running in. But we're going to run in a wide range of races so that in the end we can get the data put together and have a package that people will look at and say, absolutely, this issue matters to voters, whatever people in Washington
That
say.
is so exciting. Again, I'm just so impressed with the progress you've made just in the time since your book came out. So, this I think Americans see this as a real problem, right?
And they have to do something. They have to do something about it. Rally behind people like Zephyr.
Right. And how do we find out more about Mayday PAC? Where can
go to
people
mayday.us and you can see and join. And that's the first step people can take.
Mayday.us, and they'd probably even accept some more contributions.
We would not turn those down. That's
right.
even from the Koch brothers.
Hey, Lars, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming in. I'll be back to tell you what the president's up to today.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Okay, here we go. Wrapping up hour number 2. Ready to dive into hour number 3. We want to keep you with us, and we'll lose you on Free Speech TV. So come on over on our video stream, TawkrTV, youtube.com/Tawker, TAWKRTV. And 2 of our favorite people in the next hour you're not going to want to miss. Sister Simone Campbell, the leader of the Nuns on the Bus, with their latest big bus trip coming up. And then on the foreign policy front and the war against ISIS, Joe Cirincione from the Ploughshares Fund. Stay with us for hour number 3 on TawkrTV.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I probably would make a time machine. I would make medicine for the sick. I'd probably invent something new.
我会赢到5个总冠军戒指。
If I could have an extra 5 years to live.
You said 5, right?
5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much.
I would get more hamsters.
I would probably want to go looking for dark matter. I think I'd go looking for aliens. If I could live an extra 5 years.
I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter, but I don't have any wood.
I want to go check out the moon sometime. I'd probably teach my sister not to hate tuna.
I would try and invent a machine that lets you run at light speed.
If I had 5 more extra years to live.
I would be the boss of all the chipmunks.
Eu cantaria na frente de 1 milhão de pessoas.
I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
This is the Bill Press Show.
In the next hour, Sister Simone Campbell, Nuns on the Bus. At the top of the hour, Joe Cirincione follows her at the half. President Obama today, he and First Lady, the Vice President, will observe a moment of silence at 8:45 on the South Lawn, as they do every September 11. Then the First Lady and the President will go over to the Pentagon Memorial. After the President and the Vice President have lunch, the President and the Vice President meet this afternoon with HHS Secretary Sylvia Burwell. And then the President and the First Lady participate in a service project this afternoon. We have our briefing with Josh Earnest at 1 o'clock. Sister Simone Campbell coming up next.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Here reporting from Houston, Texas for Climate Desk. Now, one of the biggest uncertainties in climate science right now is the role of clouds. What better way to work that part out than flying right through them? That's what NASA scientists aboard this airplane think. Welcome to NASA's biggest airborne laboratory. You're coming with us today on an 8-hour NASA flight mission.
When you read these big IPCC climate assessments, what's the biggest uncertainty? There's two, right? The role of aerosols and clouds. Clouds is probably bigger than aerosols.
That is a piece of a puzzle that right now we are missing.
You can't get the models right if you don't understand the chemistry and the process.
Now we're being told we've got to get on. The doors are about to shut, so let's go aboard. time you turn on the weather, every time you hear a climate change prediction, that information has to come from somewhere. And it starts by getting sucked out of the air from planes like this.
So this mission is to try to understand the emissions from the surface, so mostly biogenic emissions, so from trees and other plants.
Right now we're flying to our very first part of this experiment on the DC-8. Over Arkansas, there's a particularly pungent bouquet of emissions that scientists are interested in measuring.
Well, these emissions lead to both aerosols and to molecules that both destroy and create ozone. So these are very important things to understand for climate studies.
How it will manifest itself, it will be in more accurate and more reliable predictions.
So what we're doing is taking a series of flyovers, each at a different level of the atmosphere, scooping up those emissions, testing them, and hopefully scientists are going to see exactly what's in this column of air all the way up.
The data that we collect in one flight can keep busy 60 scientists and students for 3 years, 4 years. We're still studying data from data collected 20 years ago.
In fact, this particular mission today is its most heavily equipped in its nearly 30 years of service. Each one of these consoles here is a specially equipped scientific instrument designed to collect all sorts of different data in real time.
And this instrument here tracks the sun.
We're looking at mist chambers. They're used to strip soluble gases.
This black line is the CO2. It's about 390 ppm right now.
We're putting these filters in the bags that we've got the aerosols that we trapped out of a certain amount of air. And so we're sampling up here about 150 liters a minute.
That ultimately flows back into the operational models. It flows back into what goes on TV every day.
Anyway, I got to get this sample going.
You do it. It's a busy man at work. We can't let him rest. Well, get this. We've just spent 2 hours crisscrossing this one cloud formation. In, back out again, back in again.
Then they grow, and we track them as long as we can, and then we let it go.
Even one cloud can hold a host of answers to the mysteries of climate change.
The patterns of, where the clouds are, what type of clouds we see, what kind of weather systems they're associated with it, that'll all be shifting in a shifting climate, in a world with climate change.
Then the big spark is this, is when we actually get the meat on the grill. And then it will be some time to process it.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight. It's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
President Obama says he has the authority to order airstrikes in Syria without going to Congress, but he would still welcome their support. Hey, hello, everybody. What do you say? It is Thursday, September 11. Here we go. Good to see you today, and thank you for joining us. The Bill Press Show coming to you live coast to coast on your local Progressive Talk radio station. We are coming to you worldwide on our video stream, TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. So whether you're listening, whether you're watching, we welcome you to the program. Look forward to hearing from you on the issues of the day. 866-55-PRESS is our toll-free number. That's how you reach us. That's how you get your comments heard, or maybe it's easier for you. Just send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/BillPressShow. And if you can't get through to the show today, just show up when the nuns of the bus come to a city near you, because they are about to get on the road again. Sister Simone Campbell is here to tell us all about it. Hi, sister. It's nice to see you.
Great to see you, Bill.
Thanks for coming back.
I'm glad to be here.
You ready? You're revved up, ready to hit the road again. Huh?
Hopefully the bus is revved up and ready to go.
Yeah,
that's the big thing.
I hope
we're excited.
Somebody's taking care of that.
Oh, yes. We have helpers. Thank heavens, because I know nothing about the bus. But we're really excited to be going on the road again, but this time about the election that's coming up, and making sure that folks know that we hold the power to vote. Good. And that's our moment to express our voice.
And we'll find out a lot more about where you're going, when you're going, and the whole purpose of it.
Cool.
Here in this half hour, Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy.
Hello.
Building up our team this morning. We have a team here, too.
I know. It's
they keep our bus running, because I can't even drive the damn thing. Alicia Cruz here on the phones, ready to take your calls again at 866-55-PRESS. And if we're all looking good, thanks to Cyprian Bolding, our videographer. Sister, I see you have a watch on. So
I have a watch on,
right.
Yes.
Have you put in your bid for the new smartwatch?
The smartwatch? No, I'm an old-fashioned kind. I like to know where the hands are. That's how I tell time, is physical space. But
well, everybody's talking about how fast and how much fun this new smartphone is going to be. David Letterman talked about it last night. You wonder how it's going to work, right? Yes. Apple. We know how the iPhones work now, the computers work. How's the iWatch going to work? Maybe not so easy. Here's David Letterman.
I have one of those new smart watches. Did you see the commercial for the new smartwatch? This is what I was talking about earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Take a look.
Apple revolutionizes timekeeping with the amazing new Apple Watch.
Yeah.
When you want to know the time, just press the button. The Apple Watch sends a wireless signal to Apple headquarters, where our system matches the Apple Watch request to your unique account ID, which has been linked to your email address. Within moments, you receive an email containing a confirmation code, which you enter into your Apple Watch. Apple then cross-references your time zone location, which is provided by the Apple Watch's GPS. Now just log into your Apple Watch by entering your username and password, and the current time is displayed. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, it's a lot easier just to go boom, right?
The old-fashioned way. I'm into that.
I think so. They have to have a lot of improvements in this watch before I sign on as well. But that is like so many things that you have to do online. When you go to shop sometimes or something, you have to send them a confirmation code. Then you wait for your email to come through, and you get this,
and then you forget your code, and they have to send it back. Oh my gosh!
I know. Yes. All right, so we don't need that for a watch.
No, I don't believe so.
Lots going on here. Sister Simone Campbell with us for the first half hour, and then Joe Cirincione from the Ploughshares Fund on the president's speech last night at the half. But first,
this is the Full Court Press. Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. How about some good news on the health of the planet? I want some good news. On the health of the planet. We always hear about the bad news and climate change and things like that. Well, a new study shows for the first time in 35 years, the ozone layer is beginning to recover. Remember back in the 80s, there was a lot of talk about how it was being depleted. The reason that it's getting better is because of the phasing out of CFCs and other types of adjutants, refrigerants was another problem. Because those were regulated and kicked out back in the 80s, over the years, we have seen it start to repair itself. So they say, fabulous. Yeah, right? This is good news.
I'm glad to hear that.
We still have a lot of other problems to deal with, of course, but it shows.
Now we have greenhouse gases.
That's right. That's right. One of the men who worked on this project, a chemist by the name of Mario Molina, said, quote, "This is a victory for diplomacy and for science and for the fact that we were able to work together."
All right.
I think that's a good way to put the whole climate.
But it does show that there's some hope for bringing things back.
That's right. That's right.
As long as we act.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
Just in time for breakfast, the International House of Pancakes, or IHOP, unveiled 2 new menu items yesterday. One of them is the Very Blueberry Cheesecake. It is a waffle with pieces of blueberries and New York cheesecake pieces baked inside of the waffle. Then, for good measure, topped with more pieces of cheesecake and blueberry sauce. That comes in at 750 calories, 33 grams of fat. That's not good enough for you. How about the bacon cheddar waffle? It is a waffle with chunks of chopped hickory smoked bacon and gooey cheddar cheese baked right into the waffle and then topped with more bacon. That comes in at 820 calories and 48 grams of fat. And by the way, if that's not enough food for you, you could always make those combo meals and put eggs, meat, and hash browns on the side.
You could also have a little bowl of fruit and a
little yogurt.
And Chobani.
Right. Well, there you go. You could do that if you were a rational thinking human being.
I would tell you, sister, I'm not I don't frequently go to IHOP, but when I was in LA, my office used to be there was an IHOP right down the street, and so I would go there sometimes for lunch. And this, to me, I always remember this, is the waiter that was always his name was Jesus. And I always thought, I knew Jesus would come back someday, but I never thought he'd come back.
And work at IHOP.
As a waiter at IHOP.
That's so funny.
I love it.
That's great.
Jesus.
And we found out yesterday afternoon that the NFL may not have been telling the whole story on the Ray Rice video.
Shocking.
Lots of conflicting reports. The latest is the Associated Press reports that law enforcement officials sent a copy of the Ray Rice elevator attack to the NFL in April of this year, and that an official from the NFL...
Long before we even heard about this whole...
That's right. And that one of the NFL officials confirmed in a voicemail that they had seen it, they got the tape, and said, "You're right, it's terrible." Now, this is not to say that Roger Goodell has definitely seen this. He maintains that the NFL never saw the tape. On top of all this, the NFL announced that former FBI Director Robert Mueller will lead a, quote, independent investigation into the NFL's handling of this.
This thing is so fishy, and every day Roger Goodell looks worse and worse.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. All right, Peter, thank you. Bring us up to date on the good and on the bad. So, sister, you are so restless. You can't stay in Washington. I don't blame you. Can't stay here long in Washington. Congress runs out of town all the time, so why shouldn't the nuns, huh? You're back on the bus.
Well, we're back on the bus, and we are leaving this town. We start September 17th in Des Moines, Iowa.
So that's
on the
next
steps
Wednesday,
right?
Next
Wednesday.
Yeah. Okay.
And everybody in the Iowa area, come join us on
Where do you start? I'm sorry.
In Des Moines.
Whoa.
Because all politics start in Iowa.
Yeah.
Of course. This isn't a presidential run. This is our effort to get people know.
And it's called We the
People, We the Voters.
Love it.
And our whole realization was that big money is trying to buy elections, trying to exercise influence. But money so far only can buy airwaves. It can't buy a vote. And we hold the vote. So we, the people, have to stand up and say, no, we've got the power. You could have the money. We've got the power. And if we stand together, that can make the difference.
And so you're going out across the country basically to rally people to take their democracy seriously and get out and participate.
Exactly.
Right?
Democracy is hard work, and you have to figure out what's happening in an election. So we've got some candidate comparisons between two candidates in various races. We've got that whole focus on voter registration, being prepared to vote. And if you're not eligible to vote, you can help the vote by making sure folks in your neighborhood do vote who can, helping folks get to the poll. So our campaign is to get offices, to get churches, to get neighborhoods, to get blocks to be 100% voting. Your Bill Press show can sign up as 100% voters and to make sure that everybody gets out to vote.
That's a great concept. I mean, and like building blocks, right?
Exactly. No one should vote alone is our motto. So take somebody with you.
Yeah, right. I mean, if every family were 100%, if every office were 100%, every police station, every fire station, I mean, you go down the line, right? And
we could recover our democracy and really have our voice heard.
And really get the number of people voting up to something we could be proud of rather than now we're always so embarrassed how low it is.
Exactly.
The turnout is
and there's a report this morning that it's expected to be even lower than usual.
This year?
This year.
In midterm elections?
Yeah. In the summer, there was a poll that said 60% of the population did not know there was a November election. I mean, well, that's shocking in a democracy. We've got to change that.
And there's a lot at stake. A lot
at stake.
All right, so you start in Des Moines, and how long will you be on the road? And
so we're on the road a month, a little over a month.
Whoa.
I know. Yeah. We take a little break, praise God, because I have to go to community meetings. But but we're going to Iowa, Minnesota, stopping in Chicago, then up to Michigan, Kentucky, West Virginia, North Carolina, Louisiana, Georgia, and then we have to leave the bus and fly to Colorado. We're doing 2 days a day and a half in Colorado, but we couldn't afford to get the bus out there. The irony of all this is that to fight against big money, you have to raise big money. So
yeah. Now, it could be just a coincidence, but some of the states that you mentioned, Georgia, North Carolina, Kentucky, Louisiana, Colorado. There's pretty important Senate races going on in some of those states.
Absolutely.
Just a coincidence?
Part coincidence and part not. Part of it is that in the places where there's serious races, we really need to have the discussion about what's at stake, what matters. Because people think, vote, they're all the same. They're not. But we want to lift up what the reality is, the choices that are there, and then let people make their choice.
But are you telling people whom to vote for in those states?
No. We're just worried about turnout. That's what we care about.
Okay.
And so we're going to low-income communities. We're going to have town halls for the 100%. We're going to do business roundtables. We're going to service sites, all kinds of places. But the urge is register, vote.
Now, how can people find out when and where you're going to be? You must have a
we have
itinerary,
a handy-dandy
right?
thing. We do. And it's getting filled out.
I'm not surprised.
Nunsonthebus.org.
Nuns
on the bus.
Nunsonthebus.org.
And it takes you to our site. And there's this glorious bus on the homepage. And then it has stickers, little I vote stickers for each state that we're going to. Click on the state and on the sticker, and it gives you our what our agenda is, where our events are in those various states.
Right.
It's a cool graphic.
So people can know where you're going to be, when you're going to be, and where they can show up.
Where they can show up, and then we ask folks
if they're anywhere nearby, they can
RSVP. Let us know you're coming, so that we can be ready to welcome you.
Wow, that's really great. Yeah. So nuns, anybody wants to find out anything or maybe provide any assistance they can or whatever, nunsonthebus.org. Yeah.
And I did
Who's your bus driver?
Oh, Bill. Bill is just this wonderful guy. He's going to do it for the third year.
Bill?
His name's Bill.
Oh.
So which is really nice.
Yeah.
He has the reputation or the fame of
having... You don't have
a
nun driving the bus.
Oh, no. Some things we're great at and other things better left to others. Left to others.
Okay.
But Bill drove Elvis Presley's last tour. And so that's his claim to fame. So we're forever trying.
Which bus was wilder?
Well, that's what we keep asking him. And he says, I'm not talking about your girls' trip. I'm not talking about his trip. And so we know our secrets are safe. Exactly.
And where is Elvis?
There is a good question. We're not going to Tennessee,
Elvis.
So I don't know.
Yeah, if anybody knows where Elvis is.
Bill does.
Yeah.
Bill does.
Yes.
Same driver.
Same
so
driver.
funny.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I'd love to. Let's bring Bill in here next time.
Yeah, bring Bill.
Oh, he would love it. He would love it. He'd be great.
Yeah, we'll find out the real stories. All right, the nuns on the bus. Watch out, America! Here they come again. Made such a great impact, such a great difference on the first trip. And this is this number 2? 3.
We did immigration last year.
Oh, that's right, immigration last year. Here they go again. This time on something we can all get behind and should. Just voting, exercising our right to vote. We the people, we the voters. Sister Simone Campbell, 866-55-PRESS. Got a question or comment? You're welcome. We'll see you soon.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Oh, you should pick that up. Oh, you're such a dork. Loser. Here, let me help you with that. Oops.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look. Your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach your
likes
kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making Home Affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Text the name Terry to 69222 for a sympathetic pep talk.
You show people what you really are.
Or for a gentle pep talk, text the name Deborah.
You know you're going to make people very proud of you.
And if that's not enough, text the name Danny for an extreme pep talk.
Prove everyone wrong. Show them you're the boss.
Get your GED pep talk and find free GED classes. Text the name of the person you want a pep talk from to 69222.
Did you see the world differently? Did you celebrate the victory?
So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Did you stand up against our greatest threat? Change the world.
This is the Bill Press Show.
At 25 minutes after the hour, Sister Simone Campbell in studio with us. Joe Cirincione from the Ploughshares Fund in the next half hour. You can see the great website we were talking about just before the break with the bus up at the top. We the people, we the voters, and all the different states that you're going to. So you can click on, if you do, click like I did a little while ago. Let's say Kentucky, right?
Yep.
You will find out. October 1, you're going to be in Kentucky at 10 o'clock at this place, 2 o'clock there at the Americana Community Center, and then a rally at Courthouse Square. I mean, and that's so for each state, you've got it all lined up.
And not everything is set. We're still getting some of the events set. So if people get on a state and it's not filled out, come back because we're still building it.
Send you ideas too.
Oh, absolutely.
I also love on the right-hand side, the countdown to Election Day, 53 days, 16 hours, 32 minutes, and 42, 41 seconds. Right, boom, 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 down. You can also you can send some money here to fuel got to buy the gas for the bus,
Oh my gosh,
right?
Gas is going to cost us about $13,000, so we need gas.
Yeah, okay, need some help with that. You can also get a Nuns on the Bus T-shirt, and you can text the nuns to get any more details. It's all there on the website, which is nunsonthebus.org.
And can we add our national strategy? See it down there at the bottom, those 3 circles?
Yes.
That includes our national strategy because we only have time, space, and money to go to 10 states. So, but we have a national strategy to get everybody around the country to sign up to be 100% voting.
100%
so we've got resources, toolkits, how you can get your parish.
Register to vote, be 100% voter, voting resources. And, of course, through the website, you can pick up a copy of Sister Simone Campbell's book, A Nun on the Bus. And last time you were in, we were talking about A Nun on the Bus. Can we say a quick hello to Pat out in Beloit, Michigan? Wisconsin, I'm sorry. Hi, Pat.
Hey, just quickly, I've been thinking about this, and high school kids embrace technology. Young people embrace technology. Why can't we start a movement of a Selfie Tuesday on the 4th of November? Bring a friend, take a selfie. You have to have something that indicates where you are. And get these young people to do selfies of themselves in line voting.
All right.
Great idea. I love
sister,
it. I love it.
Yeah. And you can give Pat some credit for that, and you can steal it. You can take that idea.
I'm sure she's giving it away. It'll be great.
So excited to see you. Thank you so much again for what you're doing. And we'll catch up with you on the road.
Oh, that'd be fabulous. I love it.
Like we did the last time. We'll get you from different places on the road and find out how they're doing, find out how the crowds are doing. And most important, great message. We've got to get out to vote, every one of us.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sister Simone Campbell.
Thank you, Bill.
This
Joe Cirincione
is
next.
the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
33 minutes after the hour of the Bill Press Show, here in our nation's capital, in our studio on Capitol Hill. Brought to you today by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. We all live better thanks to the good work of the men and women of the Teamsters Union under President Jim Hoffa. Find out more about their good work at their website, teamster.org. Very important speech by the President of the United States last night from the state level, the state floor, they call it, of the White House, just outside of the Blue Room, where the president is saying that ISIS poses a severe threat to American interests in the Middle East and to our allies in the Middle East, that our mission is to degrade and ultimately destroy ISIS, and that to do so, the president will lead a coalition of international forces built around airstrikes, U.S. airstrikes against positions, ISIS positions in Iraq and in Syria, supplemented, buttressed, if you will, by ground forces supplied by the Iraqi military and particularly members of the moderate opposition in Syria. The president asserting he has all the authority he needs to take this step, but he would welcome some input from Congress, but he doesn't really need it. And he asks the support of the American people for this mission. Still a lot of questions, and is a war-weary nation ready to support a war-weary president? No, it looks like nobody really wants to be here, but maybe we have to. Joe Cirincione from the Ploughshares Fund. Good to see you, Joe. We talked about this last week coming into this. Now we see what the president's strategy is. What are your thoughts about the speech last night? Let's start there.
A good speech, a solid speech. He's laid out a very good case, one that I think that is broadly acceptable to the center in this country, and politically and with the public. He's getting sniped at from both sides, right and left, today. But I thought the president was quite honest in laying out the difficulties ahead. This was not a complete strategy. This is not his final word on this. He was very clear this is going to take a long time, that we're going to be engaged in this. I think you have to call this a war, in this war for some time to come. But what I took away mostly from this was that he was doing this reluctantly. And isn't that the way you want it? A president who's reluctant to go to war, who's stingy with U.S. troops and U.S. resources, who wants to protect American lives, not squander them. He's learned the lessons of the previous administration.
So he's not using the George W. Bush, Dick Cheney playbook.
No, he's not. This is not about regime change. He's not going to war with a mission accomplished banner in his backpack. He's not under any illusions that we're going to be, greeted as liberators and that all the pieces will fall into place. This is why he took his time putting this strategy out. He wanted to make sure he had the basic building blocks of an alliance, the infantry troops, the people on the ground. They're going to have to wage ultimately the decisive battles in this war against ISIS.
But the end result may be that a president who was elected on the promise of ending 2 wars starts a third.
I think that's true. I think his legacy that he's
Which is the last thing he wanted.
Last thing he wanted. This is not where he wanted to be. This is not what he hoped for. This is not what he said in his previous statements announcing the withdrawals from Afghanistan and Iraq. He thought he was leaving behind a stable, inclusive Iraqi government that could manage its own affairs. He was wrong.
So I think it's our right, certainly in our duty, to ask some questions about the strategy. Let me ask you a couple. You alluded to this a little bit, but do we know how long this could take? And is it likely to be over before Obama leaves office?
Let me just say that first part. It is our duty. I completely agree with you. We have to be questioning this every step of the way. This is not, he's our leader, he's the guy, I voted for him, blindly follow him. No, this is tricky business. This is a slippery slope. One of the small phrases in his speech last night was he's sending 475.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's a 50% increase on what we have there now.
Right.
Now you're looking at 1,500 troops.
Right.
What happens if a plane is shot down? These are the kinds of questions you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't we going to recover the pilot? What if the pilot's captured and killed?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? So there's going to be questions all along the way. We don't know how long this is going to take. This is a very uncertain endeavor.
Likely to take, don't you, longer than he's got in
Obama's
office?
Presidency, yes. This will be his legacy to the next president.
We've spent, New York Times points out this morning, $1 trillion so far in Iraq.
Directly spent. The indirect costs, including veterans benefits, cost to the economy. Most economists figure this is a $3 trillion war in Iraq. $3 trillion it costs the American economy. You wonder why we're in a recession? That's the main reason.
Right. And this is going to cost another, we don't know, but
much less.
Maybe, huh? Less?
Yeah, I think you'll be looking at this in terms of tens of billions, hundreds of billions, because there's no ground troops, because you're not moving massive equipment in, you're not engaged in nation building. It's air support and aid to the ground forces.
All right. Now, when you look at this coalition, there are, not the coalition, the strategy, right? The way I see it, it's sort of like this table. There are 4 legs holding up this table, right? And in this strategy, there are 4 legs. There's a new Iraqi unified government. President talks about these. There's the newly trained and equipped Iraqi military.
Yes.
The newly trained and equipped Syrian opposition.
Yes.
And then help from the other nations in the region. I mean, on the ground help from Saudi Arabia, from Jordan maybe, and from the United Arab Emirates. Those are the 4 legs. Every one of those legs is iffy.
Every one.
Wouldn't you agree?
That's exactly right.
We don't control any of them.
No, we don't. You got to add the Kurds in there, in that mix someplace.
Yeah.
But that's exactly right. So each one of those legs needs major work.
So if each one of those is iffy, the whole strategy is iffy, isn't it?
This is a risk. I mean, you wonder why he hesitated. You wonder why he didn't just go in guns blazing, because of the difficulties of this situation. How do you do this? Now, the good news is, remember, we're not dealing with another nation. This, as he said last night, it's not a state.
Yeah.
What are we talking about, 10,000, 20,000 fighters? I mean, we outnumber these guys if we can just get our coalition together to move them, hit them from behind, hit them from the left, hit them from the right. This is a winnable war. We just have to do it smart.
Okay, and final question, and Peter's got a comment here from the New York Times this morning, but if you were advising the president, were you at that dinner the other night?
No, I was not. I was in Los Angeles.
Okay. If you had been at that dinner the other night, and the president said, now what about Congress? Should I go to Congress and get authorization first?
I would have been.
What would you have said?
I would have been with Jane Harman, who made the argument, yes, you have to go, and I firmly believe in this. But I also believe it's Congress's responsibility. It's their duty
to demand a vote.
To demand a vote.
Yes.
We can't go on with this kind of, it's not really a war. It's okay. I have the authority to do this. I'm protecting American lives. No, we're committing U.S. forces into combat. They're in the air, but we're committing them into combat. The Congress has to quit hiding on this issue, do the right thing, and give the president the authorization, or not.
Amen. I mean, I would not let Congress off the hook. I think it's important that the president have Congress's support. He should ask for it. They should demand it. Now, the New York Times makes a comment this morning. You alluded to how many forces are there, which is something I've been trying to figure out, Peter, in their coverage of it this morning.
The headline in the New York Times is struggling to gauge ISIS threat even as U.S. prepares to act. And as they write, they say, quote, but as President Obama prepares to send the U.S. on what could be a years-long military campaign against the militant group, American intelligence agencies have concluded that it poses no immediate threats to the United States.
ISIS, right.
Yeah,
Yes.
talking about ISIS. Some officials and terrorism experts believe that the actual danger posed by ISIS has been distorted in hours of television punditry and alarmist statements by politicians, and that there has been little substantive public debate about the unintended consequences of expanding American military action in the Middle East.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Legitimate question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is why you want to be careful. And when you hear his critics on the right, like John McCain or Dick Cheney yesterday, saying you have to go you have to go, this is a war, we commit fully, we have to hit them everywhere at once. What are they talking about? They're talking about hundreds of thousands of American troops. That's not the answer. So I like this measured approach, a piece at a time, build the strategy up. Now, the threat is serious. ISIS controls an area of the state of Maryland. About 8 million people live in that area. But the force itself, a much smaller force, no evidence, as that intelligence officials testified, that ISIS is planning any attacks on the United States. We're not aware of anything like this. The main concern is that an individual from ISIS might get in and do an attack like a French member of ISIS did just a few months ago in France. But nobody thinks ISIS has anything like the infrastructure that Al-Qaeda had when they attacked us 13 years ago today.
Right. But assessing the level of the threat and the best way to respond, these are the questions that really could and should be answered in a healthy debate in Congress.
Yeah, a constant debate. I mean, we need public involvement, congressional involvement at every step of this conflict.
Joe Cirincione here on the president's speech last night. 866-55-PRESS is the toll-free number. Many, many questions, legitimate, important questions unanswered, and the president is overall outlining his strategy and asking for the support of the American people. Are you on board? Did he make the sale with you? 866-55-PRESS. Let's talk about it.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about like $25,000.
I owe $23,000.
I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan. And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want, but lately that's been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
The Ploughshares Fund, Ploughgh, Ploughshares.org. Joe Cirincione, president, here in the studio with us, assessing the president's speech last night and joining my call for members of Congress to stand up to the plate and say, hey, this is so important that we ought to even stay in town if we have to, at least hold some hearings, hold a debate, and get some answers and rally, be supported. I don't care which way they vote, up or down, but at least this is their job, right? Do their job.
The Constitution gives the Congress and only the Congress the authority to wage war.
And we're talking war. We're not talking one little pinstrike against a group of terrorists in some remote outpost. We're talking about a sustained war here. Catherine's calling from Madison, Wisconsin on 92.1 The Mic. Hello, Catherine.
So how I feel is I'm totally against it. And bin Laden said in 2004 he would drain America's resources. Our infrastructure is crumbling. This is the move of an empire to protect corporate interests. I mean, 70% goes to the military-industrial complex and 7% to the people. I mean, we have bridges that are falling. We have attacks on public schools. This is going to be the ruination of the United States, and the way in for when the Republicans steal the election to get rid of all human services.
All right, Catherine, strong point. Joe, I'm sure.
I'm very sympathetic. I understand it. And this, when you...
But this permanent war footing that's what we're talking about, right?
Absolutely. And when you talk about a war-weary public, this is what you're talking about. I mean, not just, I'm tired. No. People say this was a mistake. This is not the way you solve the problems. This is not our role in the world. We're not the global 911 that you can call every time you have a problem. I understand that. The ISIS threat, however, I have to say, I think is somewhat unique. This is not just a civil war that's going on there. It poses a direct threat to a number of the nations in the region. It is a defeatable threat. I think the president's measured response to this is the right approach. I would not like to see an expansion of this. I don't want to see tens of thousands of U.S. forces involved. And a lot depends, stage by stage. Is the support going to be there on the ground? That's the key. Can we get the states to cooperate? There's a meeting today of the Sunni Arab leaders today who are pledging to support, aid the local forces. Let's see if they come through.
Isn't this the ultimate result? The ultimate result here of the war in Iraq?
Absolutely. There's no question we would not be in this situation if Bush and Cheney had not foolishly taken down the Iraqi government. People warned of exactly this. We've been talking about this, Bill, for quite some time. This result was foreseen. All you have to do is pick up Tom Rick's book, Fiasco. On the very first page, there's people warning what would happen if you punched a hole in the Iraqi dam. It would destabilize the region for decades. So that's what we have to understand. We're dealing with a destabilized region that's going to be chaotic for a long time.
We talked to her earlier, and this is the reason that Congresswoman Barbara Lee voted against the authorization for the use of military force, because she said the way it is written, it will be used forever, could be used forever by presidents to justify any military operation. And the Obama administration, in fact, today is saying they've got the authority to conduct these airstrikes. What authority? Authorization for the use of military force.
Yes, to go after Al-Qaeda and like elements. Is ISIS Al-Qaeda? Wait, they split from Al-Qaeda. What's your justification here? Very, very sketchy legal basis for conducting these operations.
Out in Oak Brook, Illinois. Hey, Donald, welcome to the conversation.
Yes, hi, Bill.
Hi.
Joe and yourself and the one woman that just was on are absolutely correct. Unfortunately, too bad all this, what is being said by you guys, is not being put on national television where the people get their truth from, the absolute truth. They listen to these Fox News networks. Last night I watched Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, and they had McCain on there. Well, guess who interviewed him? What's her name? I can't remember her name. Well, she's a CNN news person. The thing is no hard questions were asked about him. All we do is get lies from these networks and from the media. We got to have somebody on national TV, maybe the president, to spell out the truth, just as you guys said it, because the American people don't realize the truth.
All right, Donald, I appreciate that. But it is true. There is a lot of rah, let's go to war again in the media. I see it not just on Fox News, across the board, Joe.
Well, it's not just politicians who read the polls. The journalists do, too. And they see what's been shown in recent polls, strong American public opposition to combat troops, 2 to 1 against. But airstrikes, they are now convinced that ISIS is a threat. The killing of the 2 American journalists has changed public opinion on this, and you see 60%, 70% in favor of airstrikes against ISIS, which is why I think the president's speech was couched that way, and why you see the journalists tilting in that direction.
And as far as he mentioned, John McCain, John McCain's answer to everything, right? It's bombs.
Well,
bomb.
Yeah. So there's 2 things here. One is the Cheney-McCain view of permanent war,
right? Everywhere.
Cheney yesterday was talking about bombing Iran. We're fighting with Iran. Iran is on our side in this battle against ISIS. And the other is the political slant in this town, where the Republicans make everything about Obama. So if he invented a way to have permanent peace in the world, to provide pure water for every living being on earth, they would still criticize him. So a lot of the Republican comments on this are all aimed at attacking Obama, blaming him, portraying him as weak, naive, and dangerous.
Just the beginning of the conversation here. The president started it last night. Joe Cirincione, excellent comments this morning. Thank you so much for your time, as always.
Well, thank you, Bill. We're going to need you every step of the way in this.
Don't forget, it's I just follow your lead, dude. Ploughshares.org, and I'll be back with a quick parting shot.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
The Parting Shot with Bill Press. This is the Bill Press Show.
So how does a war-weary president convince a war-weary nation to go back to war again? Last night, the president tried. He laid out the case against ISA, and he outlined his strategy for dealing with it. Fortunately, his strategy is not the George Bush school of shoot first and ask questions later. But unfortunately, as we've been discussing this morning, it does rest on four factors, none of which we can control: a new government in Iraq, Iraqi military, the Syrian opposition, and help from neighboring Sunni states. Not one of those is in place today. Every one of them is iffy, and if every one of them is iffy, that means the whole strategy is iffy. So bottom line, last night, a war-weary president tried to convince a war-weary nation to go back to war again. I'm not sure he succeeded. Hey, that's our program for today, folks. Thanks so much for being with us. Have a good Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
This is the Bill Press Show.